One of my favorite pastimes is playing games, but I probably spend more time looking at my games and thinking about them rather than actually playing them. I'll often just be on my bed thinking like, oh man, I wish I could play some games right now. Oh wait, I've got tons of games, yippee! But I have gotten better actually beating and playing games compared to past me where I would just hoard them. I am a true video game yearner. But recently I've seen a lot of talk about video game LARPers, so I'm going to go through my history of video game consoles throughout my life to prove that I'm a true, no-life, soylent Nintendo fan gamer, loser baby man child. I mean, nobody's called me a LARP or anything. I just want to talk about video game consoles. So I am 24 years old, which means I was born in 2001, right in the middle of the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube era, but I didn't actually really get my first game console until the next generation with the DS. But before that, in the primordial soup era, pre-Cambrian age of my life when I was just a little tiny lad, my first game consoles that I were exposed to were ones I didn't own at friends' houses. So in 2006 is the earliest I can remember playing a game console when I was about 5. I was at a friend's house and he had a PlayStation 2 with Ratchet and Clank. I didn't know what either of those things were, and we were on the main menu and we were about to play, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. But then I had to leave, so I didn't actually get to play it. I just saw the main menu of the PlayStation 2 game. So that's my first video game experience, aside from like CD-ROMs, like Get Ready for School, Charlie Brown, and The Incredibles demo disc, so very ravishing games. And then in 2007, I had my first proper game console experience being the Nintendo 64 at a different friend's house. And we were playing Donkey Kong 64, and we could not control Diddy Kong, and we didn't know what we were doing, and we got stuck at a boss. So, fun stuff. Then, the next year, in 2008, I got exposed to a few different consoles, such as the Nintendo Wii, which was huge at the time with like Wii Sports and stuff, and the PlayStation 1, both at another friend's house, my childhood best friend. And I remember playing Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1. And then at the very end of 2008, we were across the country at my cousin's house for Christmas, and my older sister and I both got DS Lites. I got black and she got pink, and those were our first game consoles. Meanwhile, my younger sister got some crappy hand-me-down Leapster. But yes, Nintendo DS Lite was my first game console, and I loved it. With my 2 games, Ben 10 Protector of the Earth, and Drawn to Life SpongeBob SquarePants edition. So I started my gaming journey playing licensed games. Oh, so good, so bad. Yeah, there was a few that were actually pretty good though. But it wasn't until I discovered Pokemon that I truly kind of became a gamer, so to say. And I became obsessed. Now, I wasn't the best at controlling my anger when I was a little kid, especially when it came to games. You know, having an older and younger sister that would always pick on you and just kind of being a little boy that couldn't really handle his emotions well. So when I would lose in Pokemon, I would freak out, go, and I would throw my DS around. So my original DS Lite has a broken hinge and is being held together by sticky tape. So yeah, but it still works, surprisingly. And then at the end of 2009, after wanting one for ages, going to friends' house and playing it, me and my sisters finally got our own Nintendo Wii, with Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports, and Carnival Games Mini Golf. Ooh, yeah. But that was our first true home console, and getting games like Mario Galaxy 2, I became properly into like video games at that, from both handheld and console. Then around 2010 or 2011, I don't remember what year specifically it was, my dad brought down from the attic, or rather just the roof, because we don't have attics in Australia, his original Game Boy, which he got as a wedding gift when my parents got married. And I still have this Game Boy back in storage in Australia. It has the original like grey face covering, screen covering thing has come off, so it's just like glue residue, but it still works surprisingly. And as a kid, I was like, oh, what is this? Why is it green? Why are the games so bad? So I didn't really think much of it. Then in 2011, for Christmas, again, I got a Nintendo 3DS. Surprisingly early on, actually. There wasn't like a ton of games out at this point, and I got the red one, so pretty cool. I had Mario Kart 7 with it. And I had a lot of fun. I, again, played licensed games like Tintin, but this was the kind of console where I became like aware of mainline Nintendo things and just like the brand in general and what actual good games were. So I started to get normal classic games and started playing classic games from here. which led into 2013 when I became a full-on Nintendo fan, and I wanted a Wii U, the struggling console at the time, and still continued to struggle until it died. But I remember distinctly wanting a Wii U for my birthday, going to Target, and we went to get information about it, and the guy working there was like, "Psh, a Wii U? That sucks. You should just get an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3, they're much better." And I remember my mum being like, "So which one do you want? The Wii U, a PlayStation 3, or an Xbox 360? And I was like, "I want the Wii U. I swore allegiance to Nintendo. I want to play Nintendo Land. Please, mother, get me the Wii U. It'll be worth it." And in hindsight, it was decent. I mean, it had some good games, and I don't think there was a lot of games I could have played on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 just because I wasn't allowed to play mature-rated games. So I really enjoyed my Wii U. I got it with Nintendo Land, of course. Zombie U, which I had to return because it was rated MA in Australia, and I wasn't allowed to play that. And New Super Mario Bros. U. And I thoroughly used my Wii U, and it was very fun at parties because I was the only person that had one, so it was a pretty unique experience. And then in 2014, I discovered retro gaming and wanted to start collecting video games, specifically Nintendo stuff. They were really expensive, and I was only 12/13, so I didn't have money. So what I chose to focus on was the Game Boy line. I thought my dad's original Game Boy was cool, but ugly, so I specifically chose the Game Boy Color. I thought that was so cool because it came in different colors and it had color on the screen. So I ordered myself a second-hand Atomic Purple Game Boy Color, and this was the first ever console that I bought for myself. And I was kind of disappointed by how bad the screen was because it's not backlit or anything. But I ended up going to Japan for the first time this year, and I bought a lot of second-hand Game Boy games from places like Super Potato for probably too much money. Also from Super Potato in Akihabara in Japan, I bought the FC Combo, which is a third-party kind of bootleg console that's designed to play Famicom and Super Famicom games, so Super Nintendo and NES. But for some reason, it has a like Mega Drive controller with 6 buttons, so I don't know why, and it was really cheap, and it didn't work. So I brought it back to Australia, plugged it in, it didn't work, and I had a bunch of Super Nintendo games. So I ended up buying a Super Nintendo from a website called Fully Retro. Now, the thing is, the Australian video game collecting scene is like the worst in the world. There's nothing here. You'll get scraps, nothing at all. Where there is, they are so expensive. So the place I bought my SNES from ended up coming from the UK. So I still had to get a different like power adapter for it. And it ended up like short-circuiting and breaking like a year later. So I barely got to use my Super Nintendo. Also around this time, I got my first exposure to some Sega consoles. So I had a friend who had a Sega Mega Drive, which is called the Genesis in America, and he brought it over, and we managed to get it working, because he could never get it working at his place. And we played a few games like Sonic 3 Knuckles and The Lion King, and I was like, this is really weird. And same with the Dreamcast. I had a friend with a Dreamcast, and I vaguely remember playing it once, but he didn't really have any games, and we couldn't really get to work. And then in 2015, another Japan trip happened, and I bought a Game Boy Advance SP from a book-off for like 3,500 yen, which is very good compared to prices now, and it works perfectly. And this is my first ever Game Boy Advance, although I did play Game Boy Advance games on my DS Lite, such as Donkey Kong Country 2 and Pokemon Sapphire and like Astro Boy Omega Factor. But it was cool to have an actual Game Boy Advance. I thought it was really fun. And then for Christmas of that year, I got a new Nintendo 3DS. And I've mentioned this in my 3DS video, but I loved the wooden faceplates, and I recently modded my 3DS a few months ago, and I've just been really using it. It's gotten a second win for me, and that has become my main kind of handheld system, and my favorite, aside from the Switch. Then in 2016, again, in Japan, I ended up buying the Superboy, another off-brand Super Nintendo-related console, because I still had all these Super Nintendo games, but no real way to play them. And I was just really wanting to, despite not being good enough to play these games and not really ending up playing them. So I bought the Superboy, which is like a portable Super Nintendo. And I still think it's kind of cool. It's very bulky, not the best build quality-wise, and sometimes it doesn't work the best. But when I did use it, I actually really kind of liked it, and you could even connect it to the TV. So I thought it was really cool, and it was a precursor to what became the Switch, which in 2017 I did get as well. And of course, the Switch is my favorite console. I have countless games for it. It's what got me into properly playing and beating games and discovering so many franchises, so I've made a few videos on the Switch already. But you may have noticed something. Everything has been Nintendo. aside from playing like the PlayStation 2 and 1 at friend's house and playing like the Xbox Connect and the Xbox One at another friend's house like once, I only ever stuck to Nintendo. I changed that in 2019 because I bought a PS4 Slim. I discovered a whole new world of gaming with everything that's just not available on Nintendo, and because I grew up with the Wii U, there wasn't a lot of third party back then, so I was pretty much discovering third party games for the first time with the PS4. And I had a lot of fun with it, with games like Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, Red Dead Redemption 2, the Uncharted games, and I even tried a bit of Kingdom Hearts. But unfortunately, my PS4 broke in 2023 when I was moving between houses. I don't know specifically why, but yeah, unfortunately that put an end to my Sony career, and I ended up selling or giving away my PS4 games, so I don't have any more. And then I didn't get any consoles for a solid 5 years until last year with the Nintendo Switch 2, which I've gotten plenty of use out of and I've really been enjoying so far. And then finally, most recently, which I talked about, I got a new Nintendo DS Lite, the exact same model as my original, to kind of rekindle that nostalgia a little bit. So, man, that's really a lot of consoles, isn't it? And for a lot of that, I was just a dumb kid who was just getting things for like my birthday or Christmas and wasn't really beating games and just playing like Lego and Pokemon. But now that I've actually grown up, I've got like a long history of game consoles and a lot I want to go back and collect and play and kind of rediscover, especially like those PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games. But yes, if there's one thing I can say for certain throughout all of this and the fact that I can remember it all, is that I am a loser. Oops, turned out I lied, sorry. I actually bought a DSi XL in yellow this week, which is the one I've been hunting for and really wanting because it's got excellent screens, it's big and like a fun color, and I finally got it today, so I got my dream DS console. But with that, that is my final console that I've gotten in my life. Let me know what your first game console was, because I feel like in the early 2000s like I was, there was a lot of different systems floating around, and kind of like older ones from earlier generations, so I am curious. Let me know in the comments below.